I did a DNA test at a family party to surprise and cheer up the family, but it turned out that my brother is not really my relative. A few weeks ago, I decided to do something for our family party. We were planning a get-together at my parents' house. Food, music, relatives. I'd seen online about DNA tests, the kind you mail in to check your ancestry. I thought it'd be a surprise to cheer everyone up since things had been tense. My parents arguing, my brother acting off. I ordered kits for me, my brother, my mom, my dad, my aunt, and my uncle. The plan was to secretly collect samples the night before, send them off, and reveal the results at the party. I figured it'd show we're all connected, nothing more. The kits arrived, and I started planning. The night before the party, everyone was at the house setting up. I got my dad's DNA from a spoon and my brother's from a beer can. It was easy. But then I decided to tell my mom. I thought she'd like being in on it. I pulled her aside while she was folding napkins and told her about the kits and the surprise. Her reaction was off. She stopped, looked at me, and said it wasn't nice to do that. She said it felt wrong? I took it as her thinking I didn't trust her. It threw me off, and I started doubting the whole thing. After my mom said it wasn't nice to do the DNA tests, I decided to drop the plan. I didn't want her upset or thinking I didn't trust her, so I put the kits away. The next morning, the results came in an email. I'd sent the samples earlier, before talking to her. I got excited again, thinking it'd be a fun surprise to show we're all connected. I was sure nothing bad would come up. I downloaded the files but didn't look at them, planning to reveal them at the party. I ignored my mom's reaction and brought my laptop with the results to the party. The party was in full swing by the time I got to my parents' house. Everyone was there. My dad handling the grill, my brother scrolling on his phone, my aunt and uncle arranging chairs, and my mom moving between the kitchen and the backyard, keeping everything on track. I had my laptop with the DNA results in my bag, and I was still set on doing the reveal. I'd convinced myself it'd be fine, that my mom would see it was just a fun thing once it was done. I kept the plan to myself, not wanting anyone to tip her off before I was ready. As the night went on, I started feeling more confident. People were eating, laughing, catching up. It was the kind of family vibe I'd been hoping for. I figured this was the perfect moment to drop the surprise. I waited until after dinner when everyone was settled in the living room, some with drinks, others picking at leftovers. I grabbed my laptop, plugged it into the TV so everyone could see the screen, and called for attention. I said I had something cool to show them, something I'd been working on. I mentioned the DNA tests, saying I'd done it for all of us to see how we're linked. I added a little tease, saying maybe things weren't as simple as we thought, just to build some hype. I hadn't even looked at the results yet, so I was bluffing, assuming it'd all be normal. My mom's face changed the second I brought up the tests. She'd been sitting on the couch, chatting with my aunt, but she stood up fast. She cut me off before I could open the files, saying I needed to stop. Her voice was sharp, louder than I expected, and it caught everyone off guard. She said I had no right to do this, that it was disrespectful, and then she turned it on the whole family, accusing us of not trusting her. My dad tried to calm her down, saying it was probably nothing serious, but she wasn't having it. My aunt and uncle looked confused, and my brother just stared at the floor. I tried to explain it was supposed to be fun, but she wouldn't listen. She walked out of the room, leaving this heavy silence behind her. I stood there, laptop still humming, wondering what I just stepped into. My mom leaving the room threw everything off, but I was already in too deep. Everyone was looking at me, my dad frowning, my aunt and uncle whispering, my brother still glued to his phone like he didn't care. I figured I had to push through. I'd hyped up the DNA results, and backing out now would just make it weirder. So, I opened the files on my laptop, still plugged into the TV, and pulled up the reports. I started with mine, just to ease into it. Basic stuff, mostly Italian on my dad's side, some Northern European from my mom's. No surprises there. I moved to my dad's next, then my aunt and uncle, keeping it light, pointing out how we all matched up. Then I got to my brother's results. I clicked the file, expecting more of the same, family ties, shared percentages, the usual. But the screen showed something else. His report didn't line up with mine or my dad's. No overlap with my mom's side either. It said he wasn't related to any of us. I stared at it, trying to process what I was seeing. The room went quiet, everyone looking at the TV, then at me, then at each other. My dad leaned forward, squinting at the screen, and asked what it meant. My aunt said maybe it was a mistake, but the numbers were clear, 0 genetic match. My uncle just sat there, mouth open. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't checked the results before, so this hit me as hard as it hit them. I mumbled something about how it must be right, that these tests don't mess up like that. My dad got up and went after my mom, who was still somewhere else in the house. My aunt started asking questions I couldn't answer. How long ago I'd done this, why I hadn't told anyone. My brother finally looked up from his phone, face blank, and asked if it was real. I said yeah, it was. The party was done after that. Nobody knew what to do, so people just started packing up. I sat there with my laptop, the screen still showing the results, feeling like I'd broken something I couldn't fix. After the DNA results came up, the house emptied out fast. My aunt and uncle left without saying much, just grabbing their stuff and heading to the car. My brother disappeared upstairs, probably to his old room, and didn't come back down. I stayed in the living room, laptop still open, trying to figure out what had just happened. My dad came back and after a while, he'd been talking to my mom in the kitchen. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. He didn't say anything about the results, just told me to shut it down and go home. I could hear my mom's voice from the other room, low and shaky, but I couldn't make out the words. I packed up and left, driving back to my place in a daze. The whole night kept replaying in my head, my mom's reaction before the reveal, the way the room froze when my brother's results showed up. It didn't take a genius to piece it together. She'd known something was off, and now it was out there. I got home and checked the results again, thinking maybe I'd misread them, but it was the same, no match. My brother wasn't my dad's kid, wasn't even tied to my mom's family the way I was. It meant she'd cheated years ago, and kept it quiet until I blew it open. The next day, my phone started blowing up. My aunt called, asking what I was thinking pulling a stunt like that. My uncle texted, saying my mom was a mess and I needed to fix it. My brother didn't reach out, but my dad did. He said my mom had admitted it, a one-time thing, back before I was born, with some guy she'd never seen again. She swore she didn't know my brother wasn't my dad's until the test. I didn't buy that, not with how she'd acted, but my dad seemed to believe her. He said he was still processing it, didn't know what came next. I just listened, feeling like I'd started a fire I couldn't put out. A few days after the party, things started falling apart for real. My mom moved out of the house and into a hotel, saying she needed space. My dad told me this over the phone. He sounded flat, like he was just reciting facts. He said she'd been crying nonstop since the reveal, barely talking to him, and then she packed a bag and left. I asked if they'd fought, and he said no, not really, just silence and her saying she couldn't stay there anymore. I didn't know what to say back. I kept thinking about how she tried to stop me from showing the results, how she'd known this could happen. Then my mom filed for divorce. My dad got the papers a week later, and he called me again to tell me. He said she didn't want to fight over anything, just wanted out, clean and fast. He didn't argue with her, didn't try to stop her. He told me he still loved her, but he couldn't look at her the same way after finding out about my brother. I asked if he talked to my brother, and he said yeah, a little. My brother hadn't said much, just asked if my dad still saw him as his son. My dad told him yes, always would, but I could tell it was complicated now. I tried reaching out to my mom myself, but she didn't pick up. I left a voicemail saying I didn't mean for this to happen, that I was sorry, but she never called back. My brother texted me once, asking why I'd done the DNA test in the first place. I told him it was supposed to be a fun surprise, nothing more, but he didn't reply after that. The family group chat went dead, no more plans, no updates, just nothing. My aunt and uncle stopped checking in too. It was like everyone was pulling away, and I was stuck in the middle, the one who'd lit the match. Weeks passed, and the family was still a mess. My mom stayed at the hotel, not talking to me or my dad. The divorce was moving forward. My dad said she'd signed the papers, and he wasn't fighting it. He started spending more time alone, just working or sitting in the house. I went over once to check on him, and he was in the garage, fixing some old lawnmower he hadn't touched in years. He didn't bring up my mom or my brother, just asked if I wanted a beer. I took it, and we sat there, not saying much. I could tell he was hurting, but he wasn't the type to spill it all out. I kept going over the DNA test in my head, wondering why I'd pushed it. I pulled up the results again one night, staring at my brother's file. It still said no match, not to me, not to my dad, not to anyone in the family. I started digging into the test company's site, checking how accurate these things are. Everything said 99.9% reliable, no room for error unless the samples got mixed up. I knew they hadn't. I'd labeled them myself, sent them off clean. It was real. My mom had cheated, and my brother was the proof. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd reacted when I told her about the kids. She'd known, or at least suspected, and I'd ignored it. I tried texting my brother again, asking if he wanted to talk. He replied this time, saying he didn't blame me but needed time. He said he'd talked to my dad more, and they were figuring things out. I asked if he'd heard from my mom, and he said no, she'd cut him off too. It hit me then, none of us knew how to fix this. The party was supposed to bring us together, and instead, it tore us apart. I deleted the test files after that, not wanting to see them anymore. Months went by, and the family didn't bounce back. My mom finalized the divorce and moved into an apartment across town. My dad told me she'd sent him a short letter with the new address, saying she didn't want trouble, just distance. He didn't go see her, didn't call her either. He started spending more time with my brother instead, taking him fishing, fixing up the car together, stuff they used to do when we were kids. I saw them once at the house, working in the garage, and my dad waved me over. My brother nodded but didn't say much. It was awkward, but they seemed okay, like they were building something new. I finally got through to my mom after weeks of trying. She picked up one night when I called, her voice quiet. She said she didn't hate me, didn't blame me, but couldn't talk about what happened. I asked if she'd known about my brother, and she didn't answer, just said it was done, and she was moving on. She hung up after that, and I haven't heard from her since. My aunt and uncle reached out too, but only to say they were staying out of it. They didn't want to pick sides, didn't want the drama. The family gathering stopped, no more parties, no holidays planned. Everyone was doing their own thing now. I kept replaying that night in my head, wishing I'd listened to my mom when she told me to stop. The DNA test was supposed to be a dumb little surprise, not a bomb. I threw out the leftover kits I'd ordered, the ones I never used, and canceled the account with the test company. It didn't change anything, but it felt like closing a door. The family wasn't the same, and I had to live with that. My dad and brother were holding on, but the rest of us were just pieces scattered around. It's been almost a year since the party, and this is where things stand. My mom's still in her apartment, living her own life. She doesn't reach out, and I stopped trying to call. My dad sold the house a few months back, said it was too big for just him, and moved into a smaller place closer to work. He's doing alright, keeps busy with his job and fixing things up. My brother's still part of his world. They see each other most weekends, working on projects, or just hanging out. My dad told me once that he doesn't care what the test said, that my brother's his son no matter what. It's the one thing that didn't break. I'm on my own now, mostly. I don't talk to my aunt and uncle much. They check in sometimes, but it's surface level stuff. My brother texts every now and then, says he's good, but we don't dig into the past. The family I thought we were is gone, replaced by this fractured version where everyone's just trying to get by. I don't blame myself as much anymore, guilt's still there, but it's quieter. I wanted to bring us together with that DNA test, and instead, I exposed something nobody was ready for. My mom cheated, my brother's not my dad's, and that's the truth we're all stuck with. Looking back, I should have listened when my mom said to drop it. She knew what was buried, and I didn't. But my dad's love for my brother, that's the one piece that held. It's not a happy ending, not even close, but it's what we've got. The family climate's changed forever, colder, smaller, split down the middle. I don't know if it'll ever warm up again, but I'm done trying to force it. That's where the story ends.